Well, actually, it's not an unreasonable question. I mean, one of the reasons why the Bush administration drew back from its initial plans to have a massive visible slaughter was the concern that throughout the region this would have extremely disruptive effects. For example, it might lead to a revolution, to a Taliban-style revolution in Pakistan. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Taliban-style revolution, which, we don't know how far away that is. If you take a look at the Gallup poll in Pakistan, whatever it means in Pakistan, I'm not sure. The latest one showed about, I think, 3% of the population supporting the United States, and namely all the ones that were quoted in the newspapers, and like about 85% opposing the war against Afghan civilians. Well, who knows where that's going to go? And suppose it spread to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is it's a brutal, oppressive regime sponsored by the United States since its origins, very strongly disliked by much of its population or even hated. Because of the oppression in these countries, there has been an opening to radical Islamists as a way of reacting when they're blocked from political participation. That's well known. All right, suppose those forces happen to take control in Saudi Arabia. Now we're talking about major nuclear war. That's the source of the major energy reserves in the world. The United States will never let that happen. I mean, I don't think any of this is going to happen, but, it's not that remote. On your first question, and that's why the Bush administration backed off, certainly, and are now trying to follow a very delicate line. Anything in that region, oil was in the background. I mean, if it wasn't oil, if it wasn't the major energy reserve of the world, the West would pay as much attention to it as they do the Congo. We have a lot of responsibility for the atrocities in the Congo, major responsibilities. It goes back to the assassination of Lumumba 40 years ago, and a lot of stuff since. So when you just talk about those savages killing each other, remember, we, and I don't mean an abstract America, I mean nice folks like us, including me, we have a lot of responsibility for it, big responsibility. But nobody's trying to do anything about it, because there isn't that much at stake in terms of, profit and power and so on. Plenty of resources, but we'll get them later after they kill each other. In the case of the major energy reserves of the world, it's a different story. They happen to be in the Gulf region, primarily in Saudi Arabia, secondarily in Iraq, a lot of natural gas in other countries, and in Central Asia. It's not at the level of the Gulf, but it's substantial. And anything that's done, that's somewhere in the background. Now, there's a lot of speculation now that the reason the U.S. is fighting in Afghanistan is because of oil pipelines that they want to put through and that sort of thing. I think that's pretty implausible. I mean, it's in the background, undoubtedly, but it can't be the reason. I mean, if it were the reason, why didn't they do it a year ago or 2 years ago when Unocal also wanted to build a pipeline? I mean, it can't be the immediate reason. It's all over the internet. You see it everywhere, lots of speculation. And what is being said is not false. I mean, there are concerns about, the so-called new great game, it's sometimes called. The effort to try of imperial powers to try to control this region the way the Russians and the British did, 100 years ago. And yeah, that's going on, and there's a lot of jockeying for power. Who's going to get control of getting the gas and oil out of the Central Asia region? The U.S. wants to make sure its corporations do it, not the Russians, not the Iranians, and a lot of interplays. So sure, that's in the background, but it's always in the background. The events that are happening now had a different cause. They have that in the background, but a different cause. Well, they are at stake. They're in the background. But look, there's a difference between issues that are in the background and an immediate cause. Those issues are constantly in the background. But if something is happening now and not a year ago, when the background issues were the same, we look for a different cause. Look, if you're an MIT student, you studied the sciences, you should know this. That's what you do. That's the way you do science. A lot of background things all the time. If something happens at a particular moment when the background conditions remain the same, you look for what changed at that moment. They are operative the way background causes are always operative. They're waiting, they're part of the background which some circumstance triggers. Okay. Now, as far as militarization goes, you may have misunderstood me. I don't know exactly what you mean, but yes, militarization is extremely dangerous. It's hazardous to human life. But its economic role is primarily, everyone at MIT ought to know this. It pays our salaries. Its economic role is as a cover for development of the high-tech economy. And yes, that's a background issue all the time. If anybody at MIT doesn't know this, they haven't looked at their paycheck.